The moment the napkin left her trembling fingers, the entire diner seemed to freeze. The spinning ceiling fan above her slowed. The chatter of forks against plates dulled, and the late afternoon sun spilling through the glass windows felt painfully bright against the fear tightening in her chest. She didn't dare look at the man she had slipped it to. She only saw the leather vest, first the unmistakable emblem stretched across the back like a warning, then the heavy tattoos wrapped around his arms like stories she wasn't meant to know. She had no idea if reaching out to someone like him was salvation or the last mistake she would ever make. Her pulse hammered so loudly that she could barely hear herself breathe as she waited for the biker to read the single word she had written in frantic, shaky letters: help. If you believe in kindness, redemption, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. It truly helps more people find these stories. She hadn't planned to come into the diner. She hadn't even meant to stop driving. But when her old car sputtered, hissed, and finally died in the middle of nowhere, she had coasted onto the gravel shoulder and stared helplessly at the distant row of motorcycles outside the diner. She told herself to keep walking, to avoid the place entirely. But exhaustion and desperation won. Her arms still ached from the bruising grip that had yanked her around for the last 3 years, and her ribs still pulsed where anger had landed too many times. She didn't run out of love, she ran out of survival. So when the engine died, she whispered a shaky prayer that maybe, just maybe, this was her moment to disappear. Inside the diner, she sat alone in a booth, pretending to study the menu. Her hands shook every time the door jingled. Every sound made her imagine his boots, his voice, the threat he carried like a shadow. She knew he would come looking for her. She just didn't know when. That was why she kept glancing over her shoulder, why she flinched whenever someone walked past her table, and why she finally noticed the group of bikers at the far end of the diner staring back at her. They looked like everything she was supposed to fear: hard stares, scar, knuckles, leather, tattoos dark and sharp and unapologetic. She knew their reputation. Everyone did. But in that moment, she didn't see criminals or outlaws. She saw men who looked like they'd been through hell and survived it. And all she needed, all she prayed for, was anyone who knew how to stand up to the kind of monster she was running from. It was the way one of them looked at her, quiet, observant, strangely steady, that made her breath hitch. He wasn't sizing her up. He wasn't staring at her body. He was watching her fear. And sometimes when someone recognizes your fear, it is because they've carried their own. She tore a napkin from the dispenser. Her pen stuttered as she wrote the word. She didn't think. She didn't plan. She simply acted before courage fled her completely. When she stood and walked past him, pretending she was only stretching her legs, she let the napkin slip. A heartbeat later, she returned to her booth, eyes lowered, chest tight enough to suffocate her. And now, across the diner, the man finally picked up the napkin. For a long moment, he didn't react. His face didn't change. His posture didn't shift. He simply read the word again as if testing its weight. And then, with a slow exhale, he set the napkin on the table and pushed himself to his feet. The other bikers looked up, confused. The woman watched with dread, half convinced he might confront her, demand an explanation, or worse, throw the napkin away. But instead, the man reached for the zipper of his heavy leather jacket. He shrugged it off with calm precision, revealing the deep scars and the ink etched across his shoulders. Then he walked toward her with the jacket folded in his hand, his expression unreadable, his footsteps steady and purposeful. When he reached her booth, he didn't sit. He didn't ask questions. He simply placed the jacket beside her, like an offering, or perhaps a shield. And then he scanned the windows, the parking lot, the road beyond the horizon, every direction danger might approach from. She realized then that he understood. He knew what it meant for someone to ask for help without speaking. He knew the language of fear, silence, and escape. And he wasn't going to let her face whatever was coming alone. The minutes crawled, she could feel her heartbeat echoing in her ears. She clutched the jacket without even meaning to, its weight grounding her in a way she hadn't felt in years. She didn't know why it comforted her. Maybe because it smelled like the open road, like leather and wind, like someone who wasn't afraid of anything. The first sign of danger came when a truck pulled into the lot too fast, gravel spitting beneath its tires. The diner's door swung hard, and the man who stormed in looked exact the way her nightmares had drawn him, red-faced, furious, searching. He spotted her instantly. She felt her breath vanish as he took one furious step toward her. And then he stopped, because there were now 5 men between him and her. The bikers didn't say a word. They didn't threaten. They didn't posture. They simply stood with the quiet, immovable certainty of men who had decided someone was under their protection. The leader, the man who had read the napkin, didn't flinch when the abuser roared, didn't react when he demanded she be handed over. He simply stared. A long, cold stare that said everything words couldn't. The abuser blustered, raged, threatened, but the bikers didn't waver. Not 1 inch. At some point, even the abuser realized he wasn't facing men he could intimidate. He was facing men who had nothing to fear, men who had lived rough lives, fought harder battles, and came out the other side. Men who knew exactly what kind of coward he was when he finally backed out of the diner, spitting curses and hatred. The woman's knees nearly buckled under the weight of relief. The fear didn't vanish, it never vanished that quickly. But something inside her cracked open enough to let in a sliver of hope. The biker sat across from her at last. He didn't smile. He didn't ask her to explain. He simply nodded toward the jacket she still clutched. It was an unspoken invitation, a promise, a reassurance that she wasn't alone anymore. Outside, the sun dipped lower, casting a golden glow across the diner windows. And for the first time in a long time, she felt the world soften. He offered her a ride to safety, not with words, but with presence, with steady patience, with the kind of strength that didn't need to shout. She realized she didn't know his name. She didn't need to, not yet. All she knew was that he saw her, believed her, and chose to help her when he didn't owe her anything at all. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and share. It truly encourages more stories like this. Before you continue to the ending, please comment below what you would have done if you saw someone slip a napkin that said help. She stepped outside with him, wrapped in the oversized jacket, and breathed in the cool evening air. Her old life was behind her, trembling and broken but fading. Ahead of her was a road she had never imagined, open, uncertain, but finally hers. And sometimes she thought, salvation arrives in leather and ink, in silence and scars, in the unexpected kindness of strangers who know how to stand in the way of darkness. And as she climbed onto the bike behind him, she realized she was no longer running. She was finally, blessedly leaving.